Hi everybody, I just wanted to talk to you today about fractions. Now fractions is something that children will start to cover in year one, and it will go with them right through school and just get bigger and bigger and bigger. It's a huge part of the curriculum by the time you get to year 5 and 6. So it's really good if we can get children really strong foundations when they're younger. I've worked with children in the past that have got through to year 4, and when we've unpicked the fraction part of their learning, they're not really sure what a fraction is. And without that solid foundation in fractions, it will be very hard for children to move on into year 5 and 6 learning without that really deep understanding. So I'm just going to talk to you today about what happens in year 1 and year 2, and we'll have a little think about how you can help your child get really strong foundations. And then over the next few videos, what I want to do is to take that in progression right up to year 6, so you can see how that progresses. And also, if your child is struggling, you can maybe go back to a previous video just to make sure those initial steps are really strong. So in year 1, we start to talk about what is a fraction. Now, a fraction is part of a whole. So that's what we teach the children. So wraps are really good to look at with your children. So I've got a wrap here, a whole wrap, and the child can then have another wrap and they can cut it in half. So we've got 2 pieces, it's been cut in half. And what we want the children to realise is that 2 halves make a whole. Now the other thing we can do on here is we can write on the wrap. Children will love this because they'll think it's so incredibly funny to actually write on a piece of food. So if we have a look at this one, we've got 1 half plus 1 half, which makes a whole pizza base. We always look, when we're writing the fraction as well, we're teaching the children that the bottom number is the number of parts that you've cut the fraction into. The line means you've cut it up, so we've cut it into 2 pieces. The top number is the number of pieces you've got here, so 1 half, 1 out of 2 pieces. That's really important to make sure they understand how we write that fraction. And then using another wrap, you can cut it into 4 pieces. And this is actually quite hard to do. I've got ink on these as well. Quite hard to do and hold up, but you get the general feeling. We would write 1/4 on each of these, and then we could put 2 of these together, and we could see by laying them on top of each other how that is the same as 1 half. So 2/4 is the same as a half. Again, emphasize when you're writing the fraction, the bottom number is the number of pieces you cut it into, and each piece is worth 1/4. So you're emphasizing all the time, this is the number of pieces. That's going to help them as they go through school. Top number is the number of pieces you've got there. So here we would have 2/4. So if we were to write that, we would end up writing 4 at the bottom because it was cut into 4 pieces, 2 at the top. 2/4 is exactly the same as 1 half. So we want children to start to realise this is how we write fractions. Bottom number, number of pieces, top number is how many we're counting. So that's the first step of fractions. Now you can do this at home with a piece of toast, with a pizza, with a cake, with a chocolate bar. Look at different foods that you have and see if the children can cut it into a half, into a quarter, really emphasizing that the bottom number, if we were to write that, is the number of pieces, and see if they can start to do that with their food. With a piece of toast, it's great again, if you've got 2 rounds of toast, you can cut it in half, cut 1 into quarters, and see that 2/4 is the same as a half. What we're trying to get the children to recognise before they get into year 3 is that the other thing is that 1/4 is actually smaller than 1 half. So 1/4 is less than 1 half. Now this can be difficult for children to understand because they think, well, 4 is a bigger number than 2. But by using practical examples, by using food and cakes and chocolate bars, we can show them that if we split something into 4 pieces and share it with 4 people, you're going to get less of a piece of cake than if you share it with 2 people. So all the time, the practical work in year 1 is really going to help. So in year 1 and year 2, we only have to do quarters, halves, and the other fraction we need to do is thirds. So thirds obviously means we've cut something into 3 pieces. Now this can be quite difficult if you've got a circular pizza and you want to cut it into 3. They should definitely be, the idea is if I was doing that really accurately, they would all be completely even sized pieces. A third means you cut something equally into 3 pieces. Sometimes easier to do, particularly on squared paper, by cutting it into thirds that way. And again, we need to say to the children, although my drawings aren't accurate, these would be equal size pieces. If you cut something into a third, you're cutting it into 3. You could then ask the children, if you drew a shape, to maybe colour in 2/3. You've cut it into 3 pieces, I want you to colour in 2. And hopefully they will start to realise that we colour in 2 pieces out of the 3. The other thing we want children to learn in year 1 and year 2 is how many pieces make a whole. So if we've got a pizza and we've cut it into quarters, how many quarters would make a whole? 1 quarter, add on another quarter, add on another quarter, add on another quarter, would give us how many quarters to make the whole? It would be 4 quarters. When the top and the bottom number are the same, it means we've cut it into 4 and we've got all 4 pieces. Same with the thirds. How many thirds would make a whole? And how many halves would make a whole? So we want children to really unpick the meaning of this fraction and to really understand what they're doing. They're cutting an object into equal pieces in quarters, thirds or halves. And hopefully by the end of year 2, they're starting to recognise that 2 quarters is the same as a half. So that's the start of equivalent fractions before they move into year 3. So I'm going to leave it there for today. That's what I wanted to mention about the fractions, the basis of fractions in year 1 and year 2. I'd like to do another video on fraction of number because that can really confuse children when we start saying a fraction of a number, because a number is a whole thing. Why would you have a fraction? So I'll do that on a different video. If you've seen your child coming home with that sort of homework, I'll do that on a different video. But for now, if you could just have a practice with food at home and just make sure they're really understanding what a fraction is, and particularly whether they can write it, understanding the bottom number is the number of pieces. Thanks for watching. Bye.